Hey, welcome to the 363rd episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patron Brian Lorenzo, who is getting a hat. Congrats, Brian. I will be packing it myself. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Adam Lowe. Today we've got Yoko Okomura on the show. She's back. Regular listeners will remember her from a few years ago now, mid-pandemic, but she's got a new film coming out called Unseen.
Yeah, and Yoko has directed a ton of stuff. She went to AFI and made a thesis film that won all sorts of awards there. She has directed a bunch of TV, Good Trouble, The Bold Type. She did 50 States of Fright for Sam Raimi. And now she's made a Blumhouse film, Unseen.
That's right. It's available March 7th on digital and on demand, and it's on MGM Plus May 2023.
We know that Yoko was recently on another podcast, our friend's podcast, Making Movies is Hard, and we realized there's maybe some overlap in our listenership, so we decided to really make sure our interview with Yoko is very different from there. So if you heard that one, you'll get all new stuff. We really dive deep into craft, into how she comes up with shot lists, how she approaches where to put her cameras, and what the difference is between directing features and directing TV. And she's such a colorful person. She literally has green hair. And we talk about that potentially too much, but I really enjoy it.
I believe that Noah's going to trim it down a little bit for us. Yoko was on episode 264.
Oh, wow.
So kind of a while ago now.
100 episodes ago. 99 episodes.
And the title of that episode was Success is Not Linear. Nearly 100 episodes later, now she's doing features. So it maybe is a little more linear than we thought.
Right. Well, the reason she had, we talked about success not being linear. First of all, we stole that line from her, but she was a hostess at a restaurant while she was directing TV. And she really is a great example of how long it takes to make it and how unsure we are as directors what the next job is going to be. So she held on to her restaurant job, even though she was already getting TV directing gigs, just to make sure that she was all set. But I'm pretty sure she's done with all the restaurant stuff at this point.
I'm pretty sure she's done with all the restaurant stuff, but
she just eats at them now,
That's
which
right.
I do too. We have so many things in common. It's a really fun talk, though.
It's great to catch up with her. And yeah, we dig in on, the ins and outs of making something suspenseful, something, the film is essentially about a phone call between two different people and all of the different ways that she amps up the energy, amps up the excitement, amps up the tension, with a really cool flavor, a tinge of camp, of opera, of archetype, but keeping it all a thrill a second. It's a cool conversation.
But it's called Unseen. You can just look for the trailer on YouTube. It's got a really cool high concept premise that I think is really awesome. But before we talk to Yoko, I wanted to remind people that we have a Patreon page, patreon.com/justshootitpod. It's where you, just like Brian Lorenzo, can go and give us $1, give us $2, give us $20. If you feel like you're getting something out of this podcast, for $20, I will personally mail you one of our last Just Shoot It hats. If Brian didn't get it, if you really want to give me a hard time, you should go get a bunch of hats right now, and then Matt and I will have to figure out.
We will be in trouble.
Yeah. Good trouble, though. We'll just have to get more hats. So anyhow, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/justshootitpod. It helps us make the show, pay to get it edited, pay our wonderful editor, Noah Bayshore, and patreon.com/justshootitpod.
And now let's hop into our conversation with Yoko Okomura and her film Unseen.
Okay, we are back with Yoko Okomura. Thanks for returning to us.
Yes, thank you for having me. I love the return guest thing. I always listen to podcasts when they talk about return guests, and I'm like, I want to be one of those someday. Here I am.
Is this your first return guest?
Yeah, first return guesting. And I think your podcast was my first podcast ever too. So
well, look
a lot
at
of
that.
first here. Yeah.
Love it.
Okay, cool. So, but this time around, you've probably been on a lot of podcasts, right?
I mean, a
promoting
lot,
this film?
define a lot, but I've been on a few
Like
now,
more than
yeah.
5?
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, ballpark. You don't have to be specific, but like how many podcasts does one go on in
Um,
something like this?
I mean, I did this like round of press now, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's sometimes hard to kind of like differentiate. Wait, was this a podcast or was this a live Instagram or was this? It
Mm-hmm.
all kind of starts to blur together. But I think I've done at least 4, so
Okay.
yeah, not too
Yeah.
many.
It's just striking me in this moment that I have no idea what a press tour is like outside of like a mega junket. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like in film school, I would like get 10 minutes with on a red carpet with somebody, or you'd see, the funny intern go in, interview Chris Hemsworth or something. And they're clearly
yeah,
like at a Hilton ballroom, just like cycling through or whatever. But like when you're not doing that, what does a
yeah.
press tour look and feel like? Is it fun? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, this is my first go around at any sort of pressed, anything. And so this has been an incredibly educational process for me. I got my own, I've hired a publicist for the first time, which is a
Mm-hmm,
brand new
mm-hmm.
thing that I did a lot of research on, whether
Wait,
it
is
was working
Camellia
with
your publicist or is she the Blumhouse publicist?
Camellia is part of KWPR, which is a company that Paramount Blumhouse hired to be, a part of
Mm-hmm,
the infrastructure of PR for
mm-hmm.
the movie. But I also have my personal publicist, and Midori, the actress, also has her own personal publicist. So like, there's a lot of people, and
Sure.
it's kind of a huge team working on it. And yeah, my first press thing, it's kind of amazing. You kind of get like a little itinerary for every single day and how many people you're talking to, how many minutes. They give you the links. It's very
Mm-hmm.
organized. And the first day of press that we did, which was our advanced screening day as well on the 2nd. Yeah, it was like I think I did 20 interviews in like a
Mm-hmm.
4-hour chunk with like 10-minute breaks in between, and it was madness. I was like, wow, yeah, I got a taste of it for the first time.
It makes me think of when you're touring with a film and you're like doing festivals and you're doing panels and things like that. You
Yeah,
can watch, and I remember watching firsthand my wife touring with films. You see anecdotes sort of coalesce and like come together and get punched up almost like a stand-up set. You see like,
totally.
oh, these anecdotes get a little bit sharper and a little bit funnier. You see the laughs, or you see what people are reacting to or what they're bored by. And like
Yeah.
it's like kind of a slow motion tour. Did that happen in fast motion for you as you're going through this junket? Like, do you feel like you
Yeah.
gave you got sharper with your bits and stories, or is that not something you're worried about?
That's so funny. It's like we're, working on our type 5, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we've been paired with really cool creative, like a lot of
hmm
genre,
hmm
podcasts, and a lot of people who really do know how to talk about the craft and kind of ask more original questions. So I feel like, yeah, we've repeated a few questions over, or a few answers a little bit over, but I feel like we haven't word for word done exactly the same thing on
hmm
these things. So but yeah, definitely, it's funny. It actually starts to feel like, wait, like the longer you do it, the more you do it, the more you get self-conscious of like, wait, have I already said this to this person already?
Sure. Sure.
It's more like a brain fog
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
situation. It's more than getting tighter. It
I
actually
was
gets a little
talking
bit
to
more.
a person with tattoos and a black T-shirt. Which one was it?
Was that you? And there was a microphone in front of their face. Was
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
the one?
Oh
Yeah.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you just never repeat any answer twice. Easy.
Yeah.
You never.
Well, to be fair to film festival panelists, you almost always get a few softball questions. It's like, what was a surprise hardship, or what, do you have a funny story? I feel like people end up sort of steering things into, well-worn territory so that they can crush. It's like a stand-up on a talk show, right?
Yeah, totally.
I remember when I was touring, going to film festivals with my first feature, you do the Q&As, and sometimes no one would have a question ready, Like
Yeah.
sometimes there's moderators and they're there and they're setting you up, but sometimes it's like any questions and people are like really quiet. And I went to a lot of festivals, and I feel like by the 10th festival, I would be like, any questions? Well, you guys come up with
Mhm.
something. Like, let me tell you some of my favorite
Smart.
questions I've been asked in the past.
That's
Because
so smart.
I would remember, I remember like I made this movie with deaf actors, and people, I think maybe were nervous to ask about it, or they didn't, it didn't even occur to them that like when you yell cut, if the actor's not facing you, like they can't cut. So it kind of, those details were like really fun, and it was based on real people and how the real people interacted with our set. Everyone that's the movie's based on is still alive and was very much involved in the film. And there's like a weirdness to that.
Got it.
But I would try to entertain people with the things that I saw worked previously and try to like not talk about things.
Sure.
Like, I love to know what camera you shot on, but like most of the people in the crowd
people don't care.
Right.
On the topic of promotion and perhaps even branding, Yoko, you have what I would call a signature color. Your hair is green. You're wearing a green outfit. I would reckon that most of your apartment is complementary to that shade of green.
Yeah, you wouldn't be wrong, sir. Yep, you're looking at behind me. Yeah, there's a lot of
green. Yeah. So you have a very clear style and aesthetic that bleeds into your film. I'm even just kind of scrubbing through the trailer here. There is a lot of green, of what I would call Yoko green.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yoko green. I claim it now.
That's right. Now, it's a nail polish color. It's a hair dye. You're set to go. But so two-part question. One, why brand yourself, right? Is it purely self-expression and you just kind of fell into being memorable? Is it maybe even a touch more calculated or something that you've embraced in some way? And then also, does that affect the way like executives and producers' expectations of your filmmaking style?
So the first one...
Or do you just like green?
Okay, well... I will say the origins of this purely is that I just love this color. Like truly, sincerely, I've always loved it. Like growing up, kind of like the Disney villain neon green, right? Like the fire of like Mufasa's fire and like the eyes of Maleficent. I just was always drawn to that. It just felt like a magical color. It just like stuck out of besides anything else, So that always, even as like a kid watching those, animated movies, just it always captivated, and I just always loved it. And there's a magic to how those colors are used in those movies, and and it actually kind of stepping back now as an adult who's a filmmaker who likes to make dark stories that has like a flare of neon in it. It kind of really makes sense that that's sort of the origin of where I started to fall in love with it. But this is a natural progression, though, because even my thesis film I made at AFI, I kind of look at the poster. My hair wasn't super green back then. I just had like a little bit of darker emerald in my hair. It was mostly black. And, mostly my movie was kind of a pink palette. But when I look at the poster of that thesis film, Kimi Kabuki, it's like a poster that is all pink, pink high heel stilettos, and then one green croc. And that says something about the main character of that movie. And I'm realizing pink and green has always just been a combination that I love. And it's naturally followed me through me as an artist building my looks. And now is it like a part of branding that's intentional? I think it's more like, rather than like intentionally pushing it, it's more like, it's naturally something that's advantageous.
You're leaning into it still, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And it's, especially, I'll be honest with you, like even with colorful hair, some executives have mistaken me for other Asian women. So I think it's actually
what other clues can I give you?
Yeah. How many other green women do you know, bro?
I don't know. There aren't. I mean, no, look. I can't even begin to tell you why that happens. That's not my business to analyze, but it does happen still.
Bonkers.
Yeah.
Can I ask what you wear on set? What your director fit is?
So, oh my goodness. Okay. It's evolved, because I would say even in the beginning of my like day one of Unseen, I intentionally dressed conservatively, in the sense that like, my hair's still colorful, but I'm wearing like all black, because I want to make sure I kind of like earn the crew's respect before I truly show my colors.
Sure.
Quote unquote. But so day one I was wearing all black, but by the time I knew that everybody thought I was a good fun time, the last day of Unseen I was wearing a mesh black sequin dress with like green like sequin hands all over it, and I've decided to make it a tradition that last day of production, if we've all had a good time, I'm going to dress up in something very impractical and glamorous.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I do think that when you literally visually match your movies, it's very helpful for executives. You know, when there's a certain need to fill, they know who to go to. I think that it is an advantage when you can actually be that way. But I don't think you have to be as loud and as very like bright as this. I think a lot of directors seem to have that. I think the Daniels look like they did Everything Everywhere. I think Spielberg looks like he did The Fabelmans. Like it all kind of starts to subtly make sense the more you build your portfolio.
Let's talk about the movie though, because I think that this is all leading towards, this is your first feature. Again, lots of style. It's a Blumhouse film. You're leaning into genre. You're embracing the genre of it all. And literally, I'm like paused on a frame that's like, look, it's the forest, but it's green, and then your character is in purple, right? Like it's a drone top-down shot. So talk to us about how Blumhouse films kind of notoriously are built with a model of, it's a pipeline, right? Where they're trying to make really awesome movies, and they've made a ton of really great ones, but they're intentionally low budget. And I think Jason Blum has gone on the record as saying that he loves to have the creative freedom to do that, but it comes with limitations, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about multi-million-dollar films.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like low budget in that sense.
Yeah. It's not a nights and weekends sort of project. But so I imagine you're still sprinting. You're still not being able to get every single toy that you want. And I think that when Oren and I have been in those situations, it's really easy to just be like, okay, I know that the wall isn't green, but I can make it work, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Or like we don't have enough light, or we don't have enough time to light it the way we want it to, or whatever.
Right.
And so all of the things that you have planned that are in your lookbook and your style guide that are going to make it feel stylized and make it feel Yoko kind of slowly get sanded off, right? So talk to us about how you maintain an aesthetic in a fast-paced, relatively low-budget environment.
Yeah, and can we rewind even like before that? Like, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about like how you came up with the style, the visual style for this, and then
sure.
Knowing
what,
that you have 22 days to shoot, and
exactly,
you have to shoot. Right. I think didn't you have to shoot in a geographic area, a certain place?
Yes, we they made 8 of these different movies. I was one of 8, and they were all shooting in New Orleans, Louisiana. One after the other, kind of almost like a TV show with episodes. So they had a machine running, and I was plopped into it to make my own movie within that machine. Yeah, you know what's funny though? Like 22 days to me, as somebody who came from nights and weekends shoots and TV shows that's 7 days for an episode, I was like, 22 days, wow. So having run the gauntlet so much in indies, it's like that if it didn't feel too restrictive to me. It was definitely intimidating in the sense that like it's 22 days, but this script is dense. Like there's a 9-page scene with like so many little tiny bits of beats of like, she falls down, she breaks her glasses, he's, doing this, he's doing that. It's very dense. And on top of that, we pretty much had to shoot the movie twice because we were shooting one girl's coverage, over 2 weeks, and then going back to the same scenes to do the other girl's coverage at a different location. So amidst, knowing that it was going to be tight.
Sorry, can you clarify that? Why was that the case?
Well, so yeah, we shot Midori's side of the phone call, which was all forest locations. So we had to shoot her out and shoot all of that before we went to the gas station and shot all of Jolene's side.
Should we give the premise real quick? Because I think it'll be really helpful. For listeners.
Yeah. There's a plot-driven reason why you couldn't shoot the conversations in the same space, basically.
Absolutely. Okay. So the movie Unseen is a like survival thriller that's about one woman who is in a gas station and she's having a hard time in her life, depressed, kind of have a horrible boss. But then one day she gets a call from a stranger. This stranger happens to be somebody who was kidnapped by her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, and who was trying to murder her. she has fought back, but then in order to escape, she has accidentally broken her glasses. So she's incredibly nearsighted. She can't see anything. So in order to survive, she has made a phone call, and it happens to connect to somebody who accidentally had called her previously. So essentially, it's these two strangers who are across the country. One girl's in Michigan, one girl's in Florida. And the girl in Florida is having to navigate this girl in Michigan to survival through a video call. And that is why these are people who are never in the same shot together on location.
Right. So that makes sense. So like, even though you're getting, say, the dialogue from the person who's in Michigan guiding the person through the forest, you can't, say, for instance, cross cover any of that. Or
yeah,
I'm curious, is all of the phone screens, are they all green then? Is that how you're shooting that, or
so
is
that
there
was one
any
of
practical move or no? Yeah.
we actually attempted a practical phone pipeline,
Yeah.
which did not work out. So, bless our hearts, we tried. But at the end of the day, it was just too quick of a turnaround to actually pick the takes of that we would actually want to shoot practically. So a lot of it just ended up being green screened, and we learned a lesson.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough.
And so I guess based on that answer, you decided to shoot the girl who's being chased by her ex-boyfriend first.
Yes, we shot Midori Francis, Emily's side in the forest first. But Jolene, who plays Sam, flew out, even though she wasn't actually going to be shot herself, and did all of the scenes off camera with her. So,
Awesome.
So the schedule really required us to, again, shoot the same scene they just did again later with coverage in a completely different location, completely different lighting, completely different everything. So it was like shooting double the movie. And
you get your full SAG rate, right, when you fly out to do that?
Oh, you know what? That was somebody else's job to assess that. I honestly have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, there's this thing. I feel like you always hear these stories where it's like, oh, this actor was so generous. They came and they did their lines off camera, even though they didn't need to be on set that day. And I'm like, yeah, if I'm in SAG and I can get paid to be on set, not have to worry about what I look like, and get 3 meals a day, I'm in.
I think it's a flat rate, but don't quote me on that. So I'm not quite
like
sure.
a weekly rate.
Yeah. But
Still
yeah,
cool.
I know. Yeah, totally. But ultimately, that they both loved that process, though. Like, they really did. If we were to develop one half of the movie without the other actress, like, they would have ended up with a scene that they weren't a part of collaborating on. So it was really pretty crucial.
I love that as a philosophy, and just thinking about the realities of like your poor actor, reading opposite the AD, being like, run,
Yes.
look out, he's coming, or
even
whatever.
worse, the script supervisor, and they're just pronouncing everything incorrectly.
Yeah, it made a huge difference for both of their performances. Like, it really was crucial. And the fact that, they were both there from the very beginning to the very end also allowed the actors to build a really, like, sincere relationship and friendship, which I think only, helped the chemistry on screen.
Yeah, I love that so much. What's funny to me about this is that this is like, the premise sounds like so perfect for like a low budget concept. It's got thriller elements. It's really fun. And it's like, it's basically one person in the woods and then one person in a gas station. Yeah, it couldn't be simpler. And then as soon as you start to think about how you actually pull it off, it just becomes so much more complicated.
Yes, it really did.
Were there other aspects of the film that surprised you in their complexity?
I think that a big learning experience for me on this movie was actually VFX. And when I think you asked earlier, like, what was the thing that Yoko wanted that had to start getting carved down a little bit. What was amazing about production was that I actually felt like the producers really understood that this was a challenging movie and really needed a lot of resources as far as all the different elements. We're shooting so many things, and I was about able to kind of get those fun extra toys. Like, we definitely had to negotiate some things. We're not going to do this, so we can do this instead. But especially that kind of cliff scene that we got. We got to have a crane at the edge of a cliff. Like, that was a wonderful, exciting piece of toy, tool that we could have. But when we got to post-production, that's when I was like, oh, here are the limitations. Because our movie, so all the other movies pretty much maybe had like an average of 100 VFX shots, but our movie had 300. So it was many, many times over what, this particular, pipeline was used to. So that's when I started to feel the limitations of, like it's not going to it might not quite look like how I hoped.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do VFX on your TV show? So you've done 5 episodes of TV. Did you do them all before you shot this movie?
I did 4 before I shot the movie, but as a TV director, you don't get to hang out around till they do VFX. That's completely on the showrunner and the producers. I pretty much in a TV show, I have to bounce after 4 days. That's all that I get. So I watch the final product and realize what kind of VFX they did.
Sure. You're like, oh, it looks nice.
Do you leave notes, or do you say like, ooh, I thought it would be cool if you do this, or maybe fix this thing, or this blink looks weird?
I definitely leave intentions, and I definitely leave them with references that I was using during production, but whether they actually get ingested and, executed is completely, something that's out of my hands.
Right.
One thing I did was 50 States of Fright, which was very, VFX heavy. That was my first like run at really, that process. And that was, again, that was a Sam Raimi show. Like, he had his people. That part was very smooth and amazing. This was a little different.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm curious in terms of the 300 shots, though. What percentage of those are screen replacement phone shots versus?
Yeah.
The majority, it sounds like, or
many, yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
many. But I think again, the tediousness and the quantity was kind of like, kind of just blocking that pipeline.
Yeah, a shot is a shot is a shot, whether it's a monster or a phone. If you've got 300 of them, it just creates problems for sure.
And it's not just screen replacement; they had to add the cracks in the phone for every single shot where the phone was. So. Again, layers of difficulties.
Well, so I'm curious. So you get this script. The concept is based on a phone call with a camera. What goes on in Yoko's brain when you think like, okay, what am I going to do with my camera to film this? Like, am I going to film one side with an iPhone? Can you just talk to us about the approach of like how you plan out what it's going to look like as like handheld on the crazy side, on the murder side, and dollies on the gas station side? Like just tell us a little bit about how you thought of it, and both from like a creative point of view and also from a practical production point of view.
Yeah, when I first read the script, I felt this sense of dread of like, oh my goodness, if we don't do this right, this movie could be really boring and tedious to watch. Just 2 people talking on FaceTime the whole time. Like if it was just like literally a close up of their face and an over on the phone, I would be bored out of my mind. So from the very beginning, when I was even pitching to be the director of the script, I was like, I had a philosophy going in of this is incredibly emotionally subjective. We will use every tool in our pockets cinematically to make sure that you are entertained, and this is a spectacle. We are going to start, yes, with dollies and like kind of more like steady moves in the beginning with the gas station, but we're going to start right away with intensity on Emily's side, where she's this first scene in the cabin with her and her ex-boyfriend is almost like the finale of another movie. Like we start with a scene that could have been towards the end of a movie, not the beginning of the movie. So
I love that.
Yeah, from the beginning, I was like, okay, these 2 worlds are going to start off contrasted, even though they're intercut. One is high intensity, one is dread, but steady. And then as the 2 women actually talk and meet on the phone, that's when the cinematic universe of both of their sides is going to start to merge and become unified and be one. So that's where the split screen was going to become super duper important. But I didn't want to just do, again, just a split screen. I wanted to be as creative as possible to, intermingle and interact the 2 sides of the split screens. So we, again, kind of, symbolically reference their developing emotional connection.
And were you worried at all that like one side of the split screen would be hard to, like if you're going handheld on one side and, dollies on the other side, like how much were you thinking about like actual like camera movement and all those things in terms of how they intercut, how they would look next to each other? and how it works with the phone stuff.
So my DP, Fedi Verardi, and I definitely talked a lot about, again, like when we see these two sides of the world together, it has to make sense as one shot, right? It's not two shots, it's one shot. So there's one particular, scene where the two women are, it's one of the moments where they're actually having a conversation and trying to getting to know each other. And that's a scene where, one woman is sitting and one person is walking. But we were like, how can we make the cameras feel similar, even though they're doing physically completely different things? So it really was about a very steady cam that was following, leading the girl who was walking. And then, the other woman was also a steady cam, but she was staying still and just keeping them at in the same places in their frames. And then in the moment when they were, actually emotionally connecting, instead of being frontal, both, cameras would simultaneously come to the sides of both of the characters so that they were then facing each other. So we definitely were designing things to feel, orchestrated to be one. And we're very cognizant that, we don't want it to be like two different movies just like shoved into each other and, be a mess.
That's awesome. I love that. And I mean, it takes a lot of planning to get the timing right on all that stuff, right?
Yeah, that particular shot really too. Like we that's the kind of stuff, again, you pre-plan so much and you make sure the AD knows we need extra time for that. It's a special thing. And that's one where I, as a director, was like a little scared of that, because we are doing like a whole scene in a one shot where, each camera have to have the same move. It's exactly the same time. So I was like, I have to get coverage to make sure like, the editor can cut if the producers give a note that this is going too slow. Like I was doing a little bit of ass covering because I am used to television. But it was actually really cool that, once we got to the second half of that scene, we had already shot the first half. We were running out of time. Like we were really running out of time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to cover my ass. All I'm going to have is this oneer shot. But my producer, Alex, was actually like really supportive for us to all commit that this is going to be a oneer shot. We're not going to cover our asses. We're going to commit to this working and just like get this right, and spend time doing that instead of spending time getting a bunch of extra shots.
Sure. Yeah.
Doesn't that make you feel so good to have someone that is not saying, yeah, maybe just get a close up. Maybe just grab an insert.
We love it. We love it. Just like pan over and grab that rock or,
Yeah, that rock just in case.
Insert of the phone. Just for safety. Yeah.
I just love it when people are fighting for the sake of art, not to sound too too fancy, but instead of
artsy.
Yeah. Instead of coming from a place of fear, which is where I feel like a lot of, people in production and the people that have to answer the questions of why we got this come from. And so it's so nice when everyone comes together.
A thing that I've been thinking about a lot is that when you're in a situation where a producer or a creative director or somebody is regularly second guessing you, and at a certain point, you end up second guessing yourself, right? So like Yoko, when you were telling the story about how you're committing to the oneer, there's a part of me that was like, oh boy, I hope she's right. You know what I mean? Like when you're backed up like that, but you still have that baggage, all of a sudden there's a little bit of a panic of like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm right. I think this is a good idea. What if I'm wrong? Right. And that's informed by a decade of producers being like, well, just get the coverage. Do you know what I mean?
Previous experiences.
I'm processing it in real time with you two. So But so did you ever have a moment where you were like, boy, I hope this works? Or did you feel confident that it was going to work the whole way through?
Oh my goodness. No, I definitely felt, I hope this works. Because because I'm somebody who doesn't like to lock in the editors. Like I do like to give them options.
Sure.
So yeah, I was definitely afraid. Like I just didn't want to lock ourselves into a corner and then be in the edit room and be like, shoot, I didn't give us an out and this isn't working.
Right.
I think at the time, now I'm like, I love it. And I'm like, oh, of course, like the actors are amazing. And like the performance synced up so well. But like, yeah, at the time I was like, what if what if the emotional beats don't work out? What if their responses to each other actually don't work and I have to cut it up to actually make
or I just didn't think of something. I
Yeah.
was, like the beats just match up for some reason I couldn't think of. Yeah.
I do think in a feature you have a little bit more leeway because you're not hitting this exact time limit. You're
30
not
seconds specifically, or 22 and a half or 21 and a half or whatever.
And you say, this scene, I thought it would be 3 minutes, but it's 4 minutes and that's fine. And we'll get that time back somewhere else.
Definitely. I definitely think that in a feature, I mean, as a director, it's, again, like, I love collaborating with showrunners, but there's always a fear that I'm going to disappoint them, that I'm not giving them everything they need. So I do feel like a collector of options, especially on a TV show. But in a movie, at the end of the day, the whole movie has to work, and I do have to please a lot of people who are paying for it. But these small creative moments are up to me. And I'm not going to disappoint anybody more than I'll disappoint myself creatively. So yeah, it's absolutely something you have to think about. And I feel like I got lucky with that scene, but sometimes you have to step back and be like, no, we designed it, we worked hard, and that's why it works.
This is the plan. We're going to stick to it. Yeah. I love that. So we talked about I love the philosophy, especially the idea of it being one shot, not two shot, when you're living in these split screens. Can we talk a little bit about the practicalities of executing the kind of grandiose ideas, right? Because I think it's one thing to say, oh, I want to make sure that the spectacle, that it's spectacular immediately, and that we've got the energy is coursing through this film, and that there's contrast and all that stuff. And that's super fun to say in a pitch, but then what do you specifically actually do to pull that off? You know what I mean?
Yeah. The first thing I did was to make sure that the camera had something spectacular to look at. So, the forest is the forest. What can you do? But when it came to that gas station where the character Sam is, I was like, this isn't going to be a normal dingy gas station. This is going to be Pepto-Bismol, pink, and Mountain Dew green. We're going to embrace the kitsch. It's going to have neon lights in there. Show me something to look at and make the audience go oh my gosh, and just feast for their eyes, right?
Yeah, so I love that.
Did you have a reference of a location that you liked from another movie or in real life or anything?
You know what's funny? Me getting the confidence to make this location be a bold, iconic statement came from me watching Pulp Fiction. I was watching it kind of during prep, and then realized man, someday I wish I could make something a location so iconic like this, diner. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm literally about to make a movie. Why am I being scared to make this the moment?
You know what's so funny though is that diner, is that Johnny's on La Brea and Wilshire?
I think so.
I'm pretty certain it is, and I think of that. It's a great diner, but there's a handful of stock locations that I feel have been overshot, and no disrespect, but I think Johnny's might be one of them. I was just
some David Lynch film too, right?
It's a ton of stuff and a ton of music videos in particular. And I was like, oh man, it's so smart to add color to your gas station, because we've seen the Joshua Tree, Bakersfield, Acton, standing movie set gas station a million times, especially at a student film. Do you know what I mean? If you go to a 100%. USC or AFI student thesis, I guarantee there's the same gas station is there every couple of years at bare minimum. You know what I mean? So
and
I love the color idea for sure.
Yeah, and they don't really quite have the budget to do original production design in the locations, right?
Yeah.
So it's it just all looks kind of the same, generic.
And it looks pretty good. Yeah. It looks pretty good, and there's maybe there's a diner part too, and that's a situation where a young producer is we got everything we need. Gas station scene's covered, so we'll put it elsewhere, and then it looks like everything we've seen. Yeah. I worked on those movies. It was so fun.
Yeah, and I think it's it is a process to get yourself out of the same mentality that you had back then as a film student of like, I gotta work with what I have and I can't really ask for more or else I'm being an asshole. I think I had to like actively step out of that mentality and go like, no, I can ask for this. I can push the boundaries of the aesthetic of this location. And if they're gonna say no, they'll say no and I'll work with it. But like, it's my job to ask. So
awesome.
That was the first thing to do, is to make that gas station a little out of this world. But then as far as to push the boundary, like the intensity of it, it was making sure my DP and my editor, knew the techniques that we were going to use to do that. I got my DP Fetty is amazing. And like his aesthetic is again, very like more classic, right? Like if he could do anything, I think he'd be doing more like Deacon's kind of stuff. But I'm here being like, we're going to go crazy. You're going to give me whip zooms. We're going to give me like, all kinds of crazy, we're going to give me like, wide lens close up low. Like you're going to give me some crazy shit.
That's what I'm talking about,
like,
Yoko.
He's like, let's do it. Okay, I get it. He understood the assignment. So that was number one, to make sure that we're generating raw footage that had that energy.
Sometimes I tell people I want it to look like a Capri Sun commercial from the 90s.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like just like
kind of cracked out.
18 mil, super close up, like if Terry Gilliam was going to do a Gushers commercial.
Yep, 100%. And like I was pulling references, again, not from like classic horror films or classic thriller. Like I was taking like shot references from like Boondock Saints. Like I just wanted something with some really just audacity to the style and just operatic grandness. So showing my DP those references was really important.
That's cool. I love you calling out the operatic grandness as well, because I think it's easy to miss the scale of it, right? At least I personally have done that plenty of times, and that I think adding. So how, in what ways did you make it operatic? Did you make it larger than life?
Well, it's the kind of thing where, again, I read the script and I was like, if we take this concept too seriously, it's going to be a hard sell. Like this has to be fun. And the fun is going to come from the villains and the locations, again, being larger than life. I think Missy Pyle was a huge asset in bringing this operaticness, the larger than life, intensity of her anger and her almost absurd, insult comedy that she brought into her terrorizing of Sam. I think she was a really big asset to making that tonal, ad. I think, especially like the introduction of her husband and stuff, I brought in like classical music and, made sure that, I kind of like honed in on what that character is and what the comedy of that character was. He enters with like a little sailor hat on, and his like little sailor boots. But still making sure that I don't trivialize them with the comedy. I still make sure that they are a threat, like a mortal threat to the protagonists.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. So fun. Makes me think of also like Baz Luhrmann is probably a nice tonal comp. Love me the Luhrmann. Very much an inspiration to me. And I also take a lot from Edgar Wright as far as visual comedy and editing and match cuts and all that stuff. So yeah.
Do you have any sort of philosophy in terms of when you're making your shot list? Do you make shot lists on a feature like this?
I do. I shot listed pretty hardcore, to a degree where my AD made fun of me for being so prepared. I don't know, not in jest. He's amazing. I love him. He was our set dad. But after we wrapped, he was like, the directors usually have the DP make the shot list, and it's usually half the length of what you gave us.
Who says that though? I've heard people say that before, but I've never
in my
with a
life.
DP.
We've talked to a director a week for years.
Yeah,
I don't think I know a single person who would have a DP make a shot list. That's crazy.
I mean, a lot of people make the shot list with the DP, alongside them. But not. Oh, what are we shooting today? Though. I guess Spielberg just will walk into, there are the directors that will walk into the room and just kind of say, okay, let's start here.
But they're still calling the shots though. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
No one would ever hand me a list and be like, this is what we're shooting.
I think what my AD was referencing was that the DP often does the actual assembly, you know, and like does the actual like, you know, Excel sheet with the images and what it's called and stuff. Whereas I was generating the actual list and like adding the details of everything that I wanted into it. And then like the morning of sending it to everybody, which was then distributed to the whole crew.
Gotcha.
And did you have storyboards?
Sometimes my list could be sloppy. There's a little bit like medium on could be a little more clear. Sorry, Oren, you had the storyboards?
Oh yeah. Well, my shot lists usually just say master shot and then coverage, and then that's it. And I just hand that to the DP and go take a nap. Did you storyboard action scenes, or how do you do that? What's your process for that?
Yes, I was able to get a professional, storyboarder to collaborate with, to draw out 3 key, you know, scenes that had a lot of different elements in it as far as stunts go and VFX go, so that, you know, for everybody to get on the same page. I needed a real illustrator's actual, you know, skills. But outside of those scenes, I definitely, you know, did my own little doodles just to. For me, storyboards are shorthand for like the pacing I need on set. Because like reading when I'm in set brain, reading lines is almost like I have a concussion. Like reading text that says like medium shot on Emily, low angle, 35 millimeter. It just doesn't register when I see words. But if I see a little, you know, thumbnail of a doodle I've done, I know exactly what that is, you know?
Oh yeah, I've been on set so many times. We're about to wrap or move on, and then AD comes and they're like, "Hey, Oren, we didn't get this shot 107B," and I'll look at it and it'll say something like, medium over on Jessica, and I'll be like, I have no idea what is that supposed to be? Medium over who? So yeah, I think I'm like that too, and just the process of writing those things down is what hopefully cements them in our brain. But I think I've heard, my guess is most directors that are, you know, hardworking directors that, you know, care about what they're making don't look at shot lists on set because they've already gone through it in their brain so many times.
They've internalized it.
Right.
But I think, you know, the even a thumbnail is nice to communicate to a crew in a different way. I think to Yoko's point of like, seeing text is one thing, but like seeing the image just makes things a little bit clearer for people, even if it's chicken scratch. How are you as an illustrator? Are you on a scale of, you know, kindergartner to a storyboard artist? Where do you think you land?
I think I'm like a cute middle schooler, you know, like doodling kittens and things. Yeah. It functions. But you know, it's like cute little, you know, hands that don't look like hands, you know, they definitely look like doodles, but you know, and sometimes also like when I'm really need like an actual like angle, like a low angle where you see somebody's like, you know, I take like a doll and I take photos and I just like put those in.
I over the years have become more into photo boards, I think. But on this last job, people were like, I don't know what, like we ended up tracing them and like drawing everything in because they were like, we don't know what's going on here.
You know, at AFI, I really fell in love with the video storyboard, which is pretty much just like, you know, shooting the whole movie already. And I know Edgar Wright does a lot of that, especially for his like gags. But and I would love to someday have the resources to be able to pre-res like that, you know, in these features. This definitely had no time for that, but complicated stuff would be great to do actual video storyboards.
I'm curious, before we wrap up, just because you've had all this TV experience and you did the Sam Raimi show, and obviously you had this big thesis film at AFI, everything else you've done, how does shooting a feature for Blumhouse compare to directing TV? Because obviously it's different than if you wrote and directed and financed your own film where you kind of call all the shots, but it's different than TV where you're coming into a world that other people have already created. So how was that experience, and what did you like and not like about it?
Yeah, you know, again, coming up post grad school, I studied a lot of, you know, Blumhouse in the sense of like, doability, right? They had a whole Hulu, made for streaming, horror series of movies that were, very contained. So me and my producers would always just kind of like studied how those are written, like how the good ones function and, all that stuff. And so I was always familiar with it, pretty intrinsically. And then finally coming to actually be one of those directors doing one of those movies. I was very familiar again with what the assignment was going to be. But as far as collaborating with Blumhouse and the executives there and what their expectations were, yeah, I think they just really knew who I was. Like, I think they just they saw my previous work, they heard my pitch, and from the very beginning, we were making the same movie. So there wasn't any conflict of like, them telling me like, you have to do this more, it has to be more this, it has to be more that. Like, in fact, I think they understood me so well that, especially in post-production, they were giving me notes that were really helpful, that were pushing my style even more than, we may have executed it in the first, director's cut. So yeah, pretty positive.
And did you feel like you were the one that could say, let's move on, or let's change this line of dialogue, or let's make the gas station green?
Definitely. Yeah. And everybody was like, okay, that sounds fun. It was pretty supportive.
I haven't directed TV, so I don't really know, but I always I'm under the impression that you couldn't just change a line of dialogue and say, let's call it a day. Like, you need to get that type of stuff approved.
I get everything. Yeah, I mean, like, if an actor has a little tiny switch they want to make, maybe I'll get a take of that, but we're always shooting what's written first. And then doing little alts in between that I don't necessarily need to get, permission for. But as far as, like what the color of the gas station is, like, is ultimately kind of not my job almost. Like, I can give suggestions, and if they're all, great suggestions, I've added to the quality and the value of the show. But, ultimately, it is the showrunner's decision of what they want to do. Depending on the show, though, it varies. But yeah, I mean, creatively, the buck really stopped with me on the feature, and yeah, again, post production was really where we interacted most with the studio. But production, I really did have free reign.
Out of curiosity, when there were things that you wanted to change, or even, for instance, the green gas station or something like that, were you running it up the chain? Like, how does approvals work for that?
Yeah, that particular thing with the gas station and making it ridiculous, I think I had already pitched it. Like when I was pitching to be the director, I was like, I'm going to push the style. I want a bunch of colors, I set their expectation when they were hiring me. So that made it so I did not have to run everything up the chain, and it wasn't a huge, expectation change from what I had told them.
Yeah. You were already all on the same page. That makes complete sense. Yeah. No, because I could imagine being like, yeah, green gas station, so sick, right, guys? And they're like, whoa, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the key is really setting the expectations in the very beginning, and that solves so many problems for later.
Yeah. I wonder if you set the expectations to be super crazy and then deliver something that's not that crazy, if people are disappointed.
Well, to be honest, I mean, they weren't disappointed, but there was post production. They definitely gave the note, like, let's push even more crazy split screens. Some of the kind of more fragmented, like fractured split screens came from a collaboration of me, the editor, Michael Block, and the, Blumhouse executives, everybody kind of giving notes, being like, let's push this further. So, I had a little bit of that.
I feel like I always say when an idea is really good, you can tell because other people start pitching on it. Right.
Yeah.
So like they're like, oh, I get this. What if, they can plus it or like bring their own personal anecdotes or stories to it. That's when it's really kind of
it's going to work. Yeah. They were yes-anding for sure.
Well, so what's next, Yoko? Are you into the feature thing? Are you more into getting back into some more TV? Are you going to make any more of your own things?
I have fallen in love. I mean, I always kind of knew this was my format, but the ability to, begin and end a story in a feature is incredibly attractive to me. Because to me, I design for an arc, right? I think as a director, you're designing for the arc of a story, and that kind of, beginning and end allows me to make something that's more distinct. And so I really want to keep doing that. My next goal absolutely is like a theatrically released feature. I got big dreams, up in the sky of someday doing like super villain, prequel kind of movies for big studios. But I think the next thing, my first theatrical, I hope, is another, horror film, something that's, glamorous meeting the dark world. I want to make a horror film in the fashion world. So I got a bunch of different scripts going and collaborations going with writers right now, and also reading other scripts. So I don't know exactly what's going to be my next thing. You never know what's going to hit, but I have some specific goals.
Some irons in the fire. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you'll come back for that next one.
Me too. I hope that's sooner than later. Yeah, that'd be
same.
great.
Us too. We need a guest. We'll slot you in, so you just have to make a movie.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me pull up my
yeah.
spreadsheet, and we'll just kind of pencil it in.
Love it.
Where can people keep track of all of your cool projects? What's the best way to stay in the world of Yoko?
Yes, my Instagram, you can find me at ForYoko, FOURYOKO, like the infamous beverage from the 2000s, For Loco. And you can find me on TikTok at Director Yoko. Those are the main places.
And you're pretty active on TikTok, right? People should definitely check you out.
It's funny, when I'm actually working, there's no TikTok going on. So like if I'm active on TikTok, it means I'm unemployed. So you can really keep track of what I'm doing.
Yeah. Hey everyone, my movie's going to come out. I turned in my edit and I can't wait.
That's it. But yes, I like to have fun on TikTok. I like to use it as a place to, for me to teach everything that I can to people who don't necessarily, have the capacity to reach film schools or, afford it. So I like to answer questions and give as much as I can on that platform.
Do you have a minute to hang out and endorse with us?
Of course. I would love to.
Unpaid endorsements.
I'm working on this show for Audible, and we are working on our outline that we have to present to them. And one of the things that was recommended to us by our partners at Temple Hill was to put the outline in a deck, to really present it, like pitch a story. Even though it's an audio story, pitch it with images and do all these almost like you would pitch a movie, except we're pitching an audio show. And so everyone knows about AI being like this thing that everyone is worried about and scared about, and also using and trying to figure out how to use it. So I feel like I'm trying to gather a list of ways you can use AI in an easy way. I used it for this treatment in two ways. One is pretty obvious. I needed a cover image. The company we're working with, Temple Hill, they made the Twilight movies, and there has been some talk about how our story has some similarities to Twilight. And he was pitching, what if we do kind of a cover that's similar to the Twilight cover, except, in Twilight, it's these two hands holding an apple. But in our story, there's a scene where this girl holds this beetle and it comes to life and starts flying like a rhino beetle. So I used Midjourney to create the cover for me, and it's pretty good. Definitely good enough for a pitch deck. I know, Matt, you've used AI a lot and you use Dolly, but the Midjourney stuff
Midjourney is better. Yeah.
It's pretty awesome, especially if you have kind of an abstract thing. The problem that I ran into is it's really bad at fingers. So having two hands, my hands have like 40,000 fingers on them, but you don't really notice them.
This is my hack for that, actually, is that I think that Midjourney is good for backgrounds, right? Like if you need a specific environment, we need to be in an incredible cave or whatever. And I think maybe, Oren, to your point, like the surreal sort of something that's not especially Photoshoppable, but then add your people through like find models Photoshop. And then Photoshop them in. Yeah. So like, because like there's a lot of great free sites like Pexels or Unsplash or places like that have great looking models, and maybe the backgrounds are a little weird or something like that. So if you can combine the two, that has been, I think, relatively successful.
So that was useful. And the other thing that's super useful is one of the episodes, our main character, Nikki, someone leaves her this list that has names, 5 names on it. And she's the fourth name, and it just says you're next. She lives in Rhode Island, and she's a teenager. And so I just went to ChatGPT, and I said, can you just give me a list of 10 teenage girls that live in Rhode Island, first and last names, kind of in the style of Stephen King, but don't copy any specific names, just in that style. And it gave me a bunch of different lists. So little things like that where, you know, my partner, Julie, will spend days just like figuring out names and things for characters. And I think that's cool. But also, if you want to just generate a bunch of ideas real quick that are more scenery than they are plot, you know, or character, those are two things that I've used AI for in the last day that I found kind of useful.
Yoko,
what's going on in Greenland?
You know, my Greenland would like to give an unpaid endorsement to a company that I recently utilized for a in-person event. Yeah, you know, I have never ordered my own like step and repeat. You know, those backgrounds that you take photos in front of, and I just kind of had my own little, you know, like Google in session of trying to find what company to use and stuff. But I ended up finding a company, you know, that was really, you know, awesome to work with. They're a really small company that, you know, is here in LA called Event Step and Repeat, you know, very memorable name. But they're very communicative. They're really helpful. They're really, you know, accessible on the phone to kind of help me pick the size and what kind of fabric and stuff. But then, you know, I really fell in love with them when I went to pick up the step and repeat and the stand. And it's really just like this little room with these huge printers and three guys just like printing a bunch of backgrounds. And it just felt like, oh, wow, how accessible, you know, like it's not this like big corporate thing going on. It felt like a very, you know, local business making step and repeats for, you know, Hollywood events and such. So I really liked them and definitely want to use them again. So eventstepandrepeat.com, LA company.
It doesn't look that expensive, right? You can get for $200, $300.
Yeah, I was comparing all of the different companies, and this was the most affordable, and they give you a stand. So
wow,
yeah, I really like them.
What was what did you have printed?
So for the unseen advanced screening, Gold House sponsored us getting a like photo opportunity. So you know, they're an East Coast company, so I kind of manage the actual, you know, nitty gritty of ordering it and kind of like taking care of the actual picking up and stuff. So we got the unseen logo with the Gold House and the Cape logo and these two different sponsors, and got it. It was all pink, and I rented a green carpet and kept it on theme.
By the way, this company sells literal red carpets that you can roll out. You can have 4-foot by 20-foot red carpet for $240.
Yeah, again, very affordable, accessible, cool, nice dudes. Like, you know, let me use their bathroom. It was a good time.
My unpaid endorsement is the graphic novel Ducks by Kate Beaton, who kind of became famous doing like Tumblr webcomics that are like about historical figures. She had a New York Times bestseller called Hark a Vagrant, and they're all quite silly and kind of dismantle, you know, the seriousness of the way that we think of capital H history, you know. But Ducks is a memoir. It's kind of her first truly serious, quote unquote, piece, and it's about her working in the oil sands to work off her student loans after going to art school, basically. And so it's a pretty big departure for her. The other works, she's got a handful of great children's books, The Princess and the Pony, which is now an Apple TV show, and King Baby, a personal favorite in my household right now. So it's really fascinating to see a really, frankly, pretty dark memoir from an artist who's made their career in making serious things very silly. So Ducks by Kate Beaton. It's pretty great.
Cool.
I am absolutely going to read that. I too have student loans from art school. So
sure.
Sounds very relatable.
Well, Yoko, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Anyone has any questions for us, we're happy to forward them on to her. You can email us at justshootitpod@gmail.com. You can find us across all social media at Just Shoot It Pod. I'm on Twitter at SmiteyPyleg and on Instagram at OKaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Enlow across all social media, including Letterboxd. though I should be watching more movies. This episode was edited by Noah Bayshore, thanks Noah, and produced by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist Jazar. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.